Hey everybody, Dirtbag Gaming here. Today we're going to be bringing you another Raid Shadow Legends video. This is actually a part 3 of a 3-part series on how to arena. So if you haven't watched the first 2 parts, definitely go back now. Watch the first part, which is speed. Watch the second part, which is the decreased defensors. And also this part's going to be for the mass AoE nukers. Okay, so this is going to be made for the people that are newer / mid-game players that don't really know how to either build a nuke or get a nuke, going, or how to set everything up for the arena. So first one, we're going to go over who the nukers are, so the entire list of rare and epic nukers. Next, we're going to go over the stats on what you're actually going to try and use to build a nuker. And last one, how to actually gear a nuker. So it's going to be a very, very good video on if you're trying to say, alright, I want to hit really hard in the arena, or I want to progress in the arena and try and get that arbiter. First, go back, watch the 2 videos, but then come back and let's build that nuker together. Alright, so first one, we're going to go right into this index, and we're just going to go down. I'm going to try and keep them based off the factions, just so it's easier to know, like, alright, I'm looking for this faction, or this faction, excuse me. So we're going to start in the one that has the most. I think it's crazy how many AoE nukers there are in this game, especially in the epic category. But the first one we're going to go over is the rares. Okay, so the rare category we're going to go over is the starter champs. So it's pretty easy to just use whatever starter champ that you have if you're in the beginning of the game. But the first one that I started out with, because I love archers, is this girl right here, Elhain. So Elhain is a really hard nuker, especially in the end game if you really build her up high. She has very high speed, very high attack, but the nuker attacks all enemies twice. So not just once, but twice, and then she has another AoE nuke where it attacks one enemy, then all enemies. So that's definitely good if you have her. You can build her to be your main nuke. Obviously, everybody knows the next biggest nuker, which some people do use this guy in the end game. In the arena, especially for 3v3, you can build him to hit really freaking hard, is Kale. Kale's nuke is just obliterates the other team, actually an extra 50% inflicting a critical hit. So you don't actually have to build him 100% crit rate. You can keep him at 85%, and then he'll still hit 100% crit rate, but also fills the team turn meter on each enemy that's killed. So that's why it's good progressing him through the dungeons, because if he kills somebody, he actually goes faster, and the arena he might be able to overlap the second team. The next one is the orc guy, which I didn't get him for a while, but if you start out with this guy, he looks really cool. Is Gaelic right here. So Gaelic is another guy that if you don't have 100% crit rate, you can use this guy to have that auto 100% once you have 85% to inflict a critical hit, and he actually boosts his own speed up. But he attacks all enemies and hits really freaking hard. So the last one is going to be the Sacred Order. She's just really badass. She looks really cool. Is Ethel. So Ethel has a boost her own attack, which gets an extra turn, so you can give herself an extra 25% attack, and then she gets an extra turn to AoE nuke. So if you don't have a increased attack on your team, you can use Ethel to boost up herself, get an extra turn, and then attack, which also has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. So build them up to about 85% crit rate, and then as much, again, we'll go over later in the video, on how to nuke. So those are the 3 starter champs. Next one is a guy I just used for my campaign farmer. So if you get him, you can use him as a campaign farmer as well as a nuker in the arena, is the Ogrim Triad, and it's this guy right here, Bellower. So he's a Void Legendary, a little bit harder to get, but he has 1, 2, 3 AoE attacks, which I don't know if there's anybody else in the game that has all 3 AoE attacks, but either of these attacks can nuke. He has decreased defense on his attack, decreased attack, and attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 15% speed debuff on the team. But he hits relatively hard, and he's a void, so you're not going to have that wrong balance with the affinities, so you're just going to nuke everybody at the same rate. Then we have Executioner, which a lot of people don't use. He was like one of the best champions even in the end game last year. But this guy right here in the rare category, Executioner, I just leveled mine up to 50 because I use him in the Faction Wars, but he's very tanky. His base stat is 1255 defense, but if you use this skill right here, attacks all enemies, if you build him with accuracy, he can decrease the turn meter and be your nuker at the same time. So he attacks all enemies, build him up with as much defense so he lasts a little bit longer and hits harder, but he also decreased the turn meter of the other team. So if he's going second for you and you have him as like a really fast guy and you want to decrease the turn meter, your other guys will get to go faster just because they go slower, but it also places a 15% decreased speed buff on the other team. So again, he hits really hard, he's very tanky, and he's a rare, so he's pretty easy to get. Then we have another Orcs guy. Not a lot of people use him. I mean, somebody told me about him the other day, but in the Orcs we have another Void. Right here, defense-based champion, veteran. He attacks one enemy right here, attacks all enemies, has a 15% chance of placing a block buffs. So block buffs is if you go before they do and you put a block buffs on everybody, they won't get any of their buffs. Increase attack, increase speed, all that stuff, it kind of stops it. But he hits hard, and if you ever see this defense HP, you kind of want it even. So if you have a defense or a defense and attack, you want them to kind of be even. So plus 1200, plus 1200, plus 3000 plus 3000. If you get it even, it's going to hit equal amount. So that's going to be for the veteran. We have a couple Barbarians. So then the first Barbarian is Berserker. Let's go to the Barbarians. There's so many good Barbarians. Berserker right here. So the Berserker is pretty cool. He actually grants an extra turn if you kill somebody, but attacks all enemies twice. He actually ignores a part of their defense, so it's automatically in the attack. So you're going to ignore 20%. If you put a Savage Set or something crazy on him, he's ignoring so much of their defense. But he attacks every enemy twice, and he ignores their defense. So he hits relatively hard just because of the defense, but also being able to ignore or go twice if you build him right with the right speed. The next person in Barbarians is, well, obviously everybody knows the War Maiden, but we're going to go over her because she is a nuke. She does hit very hard even in the late game. If you build her to use this, you can have her go second and decrease the defense, but you can also have her just be your nuke. So if you have somebody else decrease defense, or if you want her to be a nuke slash decrease defense, you need to build her with accuracy, you need to build her with speed, and you need to build her really hard. That's why you can either choose one or the other, or you can just build her to hit really hard and just nuke the entire team. So that's the rare category with the AoE nukers. Let's get right into the epics, because a lot of us are going to want to get those epics as soon as possible, which I'm sure we will as we level through the game, but I'm going to try and, again, base them out based off the affinities. So we have the High Elves, let's start there. Luthia, right here, she attacks, right here, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff on 2 turns, but the main thing is she attacks everybody. So you can build an attack-based champion, especially in the High Elves, there's a lot of them, but her base attack is 1277, but she has 1000 defense. So she's kind of tanky at the same time, but we're mainly building her for the nuke. So if you have her and you really like the archer, you know, physique, she already has an extra 20% accuracy, which is good, but she can definitely nuke down an entire team if you build her right with this skill. And actually does a little bit more damage if you book her out as well. So the next High Elf we have, a lot of people don't use him as a nuker. He's very good in the dungeons because of his AoE skill. But Royal Guard right here, I actually just got my second Royal Guard for the dungeons, but this skill, it's actually based off the enemy max HP. But if you build him strictly just a crap ton of attack, which is around 1500, which is a lot, a crap ton of attack, it's going to do a percentage of the attack and a percentage of their max HP. So if you're facing really high tanky guys, you might be able to do a little bit more damage, but he does an AoE attack that hits everybody pretty hard if you build him with a crap ton of crit damage. So that's a Royal Guard. Next we have is the Nassel. Now he is a support champion, but he has a chance to, here we go, attack all enemies, decrease duration of all enemy buffs. So if you're facing somebody with like a shield buff before they go, he can do a little bit of attack with the AoE. He's not going to be the main damage dealer because he is a support type champion, but he's very, very tanky. He's got a 12, almost 1100 defense starting off, but he does an AoE attack that can strip some of their buffs as well. So if you want him to go before the second nuker you have, you can actually have him to do some damage, take down the shields, and then the AoE nuker comes in right after that. Then we have a Jingle Hunter. He's very, very cool because he can be a control type nuker. But attacks all enemies, decreases the turn meter by 20% if this attack is critical. Almost always your AoE nukers are going to be critical. So if you have 100% crit rate, he actually reduces their turn meter as long as the accuracy is good and fills this person's turn meter by 10%. So you attack all enemies, decrease your turn meter, and fill your own turn meter as long as it's critical, which it will be critical. Then he also has attack one enemy has a 90% chance of placing a freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn if this attack kills. So if he's your last nuker or your first nuker or whatever it may be, let's say if somebody has really low health on the other team and you shoot and kill somebody, the rest of the team is then frozen. So he can be a control nuker as well, which I've used him for in the 3v3. And he's got pretty good speed. So he is another nuker that is also a control nuker, which I love. I love having a nuker, but also controlling the other team. Alright, so those are the high elves. Let's get into the... What do we got? Orcs. So Orc, everybody knows this girl. She's amazing. I use her late game, is Argala. She hits really, really freaking hard. We talked about her in the decreased defense video because she can place this. But if you strictly want her as your nuker, she hits 3 times, everybody. Or she can have this, which kills 1 person, and then does this as well. So she has an opportunity to do this skill right here twice in a match, if not a little bit more. But mainly if you nuke down the whole team there, but let's say you leave somebody pretty low, you can do this skill, which hits somebody, and then nukes the entire team again. So again, she hits really hard. This is a 3-hitter, and it decreases defense at the same time. So if you want her to go before your last nuker, do that. If you want her to be your main nuker, you can do that as well. Next orc we have is, he's somewhat new, is right here, Ultimate Gaelic. So he definitely got a bump up. He evolved a little bit. It's got more armor. He's really good with the HP burns and the spiders, but he attacks all the enemies twice. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing an HP debuff for 2 turns if this attack is under increased attack buff. So if you have an increased attack buff, you want the increased attack buff to go first, boost up Gaelic, and then come in and then hit twice and try and get the HP burn, which kind of ticks down the enemy team a little bit more if you didn't kill him on the 1 hit. But you can boost his turn meter down, you can increase the damage on this, but he's good. You kind of want to pair him with an increased attack champion. But he can nuke, so he's definitely good. So let's go to the demons. Demons are cool. So we got the demon people... Umbral Enchantress. Okay, so she, for me, hits really hard because you build her with a lot of defense. So she can take hits as well as dish them out. She is also a control type nuker, which we love. So the control type nukers is she can actually put this out and actually make everybody attack her while being unkillable. So if you were lucky enough to get an Umbral Enchantress in the beginning of the game, if not middle of the game, she's going to be your main control person in the arena. But hitting hard, I mean this, attacks all enemies at an 80% chance of placing a block buffs. This actually hits relatively hard. It increases the damage this much, but also you can get up to 100% to block the buffs. So if she's going second or third on your team, you can attack really, really hard with this skill and put the block buffs on their team. Or you can do this one, which attacks all enemy champions, which also hits hard and puts the block cooldowns on herself, which doesn't matter, but you provoke everybody. So you can get this up to 100% chance to provoke with the unkillable, or if you want to block buffs, you put the block buffs, which is also 100%. She's very, very cool, very, very good for the arena. Infernal Baroness. This girl right here. So the defense type champion, which is good for all of her. Right here, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. It's based off of defense. So it's going to attack all enemies and make the other team hit less or weaker because of the decreased attack. But another champion that, again, just looks cool in the demon spawn, but she can put actually a perfect veil up on an ally if you're kind of not going first. Her A1 attacks all enemies and heals the lowest HP champ by 5%. So she's very defensive, very good at clearing dungeons. So if you have her for PvE, you can, but the PvE nuke, she's definitely going to be able to nuke for you guys in the arena, especially as a defense-based champion. Then we have Padma. Right here. I don't have her yet, but I hear that she's pretty good in the arena because her A1 has a decreased attack, but her nuke is attacks all enemies, has a 35% chance of placing a decreased accuracy, which is okay. Not really used that much in the arena. Because you don't really care, you're trying to nuke down the other team. But this is based off defense and attack. So this is what I was saying earlier, where if you have a champion like this, you can build them kind of even. So if you build, let's say, 2,000-3,000 in defense, if you get it up to 2,000-3,000 in attack, it's going to hit really, really hard. It's going to hit equal amount, and it's going to hit the team at the same time really hard. So if you get this person, you want to build her as a nuker, make sure you're building both stats at the same time. Alright, then we have, let's go into the Ogre and try like we were before. So we got the Ogrums. Shatter Bones. So this guy is good because I mentioned him in the other video. He can actually boost the turn meter. So fills the turn meter of all allies by 25%. Or you want him as a nuke. So attacks all enemies 3 times and has a 50% chance to decrease turn meter by 30%. So he is another control nuker champion, which is great. In the arena, it's just when you can control the other team, it's so fun. It's so fun to just watch them not do anything. Whether you freeze them, whether you sleep them, whether you ice them, like it's just this guy. If you get him, use him. He is in my 3v3 matchup sometimes if I need to kind of control and I'm just playing for fun. This guy hits hard and he can control the crap out of the other team. Alright, so he's one of the first ones that we'd love to go over because I mentioned him in the other video. Let's get into our Undead. So the Undead, they all look really cool. Not a lot of people talk about this guy, I think. No, this guy. He looks freaking awesome. I want him just because of his looks. But let's get back in the video. Okay, so this girl, she is new. People use her for the Torment. So if you want to make her as a nuke and then kind of middle/end game use her as a Torment defense, you can transfer and use her as a Torment defense to do a crap ton of damage and be your nuker at the same time. So she is some crazy stuff. Her passive is like if she is frozen or anybody else is frozen, she'd be able to remove that freeze, put up a bunch of buffs on herself, and then attack with this spell right here. This one. So attacks all enemies after she places a 50% increased attack on her for 2 turns. Has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decreased speed. So you kind of hit really hard and you put a decreased speed on the enemy champion. That's just a passive. Or if you go first, you can just use this. This is a really cool artwork to it. It kind of puts an electric cloud and just attacks everybody at the same time. But she looks really cool and she hits relatively hard because it is an AoE nuke. So if you got her, she might be free. But if you get her, she is a really good champion to nuke down the other team and use against the Torment. Then we got Husk. Husk is different. He's got a stun, so you have a chance to provoke, and you have a attacks all enemies that has a 35% chance of placing a stun. Book that up to a 35, 45, 50% chance of getting, or I'm sorry, 60% chance. 60% chance of placing a stun. Which you can book that up to like a 65% chance if you have the masteries on the enemy. It's based off of enemy max HP. So this is kind of why he's not going to hit as hard, but he can nuke down and try and stun the team. So he's a control type nuker that you can use on your team. And he has a chance to place a provoke on A1, which isn't bad. He's based off of HP, so he's going to have a ton of HP. Starts out with 20k, which is pretty good. But he can also be a nuker because the AoE stun. So that's really good. Then we got the Zalata right here. So he's a support type champion, which we were talking about before. He is going to attack all enemies, but he has a 50% chance of placing a sleep debuff, which is pretty cool. It goes up to a 75% chance. So if you want him to be your last nuker, or your first nuker if you have a signal target, you can sleep everybody. If anybody is under a sleep debuff, once they get hit, they wake up. So it's good to control the team with this. If you want him to be your last nuker, but if you want him to be your first nuker, make sure that your second nuker has the mastery that gets an extra 12% damage on sleep targets. That mastery, I don't have it in here, but the mastery is like if you get down on the first tab, you get an extra 12% for people who are under sleep, stun, or freeze debuff. So make sure you get that if you have him as a nuker. Dark Elves. So Dark Elves has a bunch of AoE nukers. First girl I really have to build is Lua. Lua is talked about a lot because of her A1, her A2, and her A3. So this is the person where if you have as a second nuker, you can just one-shot one person, decrease their turn meter by 100%, will ignore shield and block damage buffs. So really good nuke right there. And her A2 is attacks all enemies 3 times. Each critical hit heals its champion. So not really going to be used if she's going first, but you're going to be attacking all enemies. I've seen this hit really freaking hard. Her base attack is almost 1600, which is very, very high. Attack 1 hits one enemy and deals 50% of inflicted damage to all their enemies. So you're going to attack one enemy and then attack all enemies on the A1. The main thing she's going to be used for you is going to be the A2. So the A2 is going to attack all enemies 3 times, which is kind of like a Zargala, but it's really just, boom, just wipe out the entire team. So she could be a very, very good nuke. She is a void, so she is harder to get. But Madame Sarah, she is in here for the AoE nukes because she does have an AoE. Some people say that it hits pretty hard. Attacks all enemies, has a 40% chance of stealing a buff if your accuracy is high enough. Places the block debuffs on all allies, so she's kind of like a support DPSer. If you have Madame, I would strictly build her to strip the buffs and drop the defense. Don't build her as an AoE until you're like middle / towards endgame if you just want more damage to her. Most of the time you're going to see her built for this skill, but not the AoE. But if you want to hit pretty hard, you can use this, and also puts a true fear on the enemy. So it's very annoying if you're controlling the other team because they have a chance to not go. So that's always good. So she can be your control champ. Then we have Lua, and also Sylar. So Sylar I just got recently. She is right here. She's green. She has an AoE which attacks all enemies and has a 50% chance of placing a freeze debuff, which gets booked up to a 75% chance, and enemies killed by the skill cannot be revived. So it's very, very good if you're going against revive champions like Arbiter, things of that nature, endgame. So that's kind of why I want to bring her out of the, use her, level her up, and get her to remove block revive. So she'll be my second, like my last nuker, because I want to boost up, drop defense, do some damage, and then use her to be my last nuker, because if she kills somebody, they can't come back, which is kind of like a Foley. So she is like a cheaper version of a Foley, and also has a chance to place a freeze. So very good control, very good DPSer and AoE. She's very, very good if you have her. Use her now, and also endgame arena. So let's go into our Barbarians. We have 2 ladies. First one we've talked about before, which is High Katoon. She can be built to hit pretty hard, as well as has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter. So if you have her as your speed lead, you're mainly going to be using her to fill the turn meter of your team, especially first and on auto. But if you have her going, lapping the team, or if you have her going last, she can actually do some damage with her. Attack all enemies, has a 50% chance to decrease the turn meter, so you can actually decrease somebody's turn meter on the other team to make your other team go faster. The last Barbarians we have as the epics is Alika. She's pretty cool. She looks cool. She's got a lot of bow champions in the Barbarians. But attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of increasing the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 1, which is insane if you think about it. She's a control AoE nuker, so she has a 75 up to 100% chance of increasing the cooldowns. So if your team's going first, and let's say they survive and they go, they can't res, they can't boost up, they can't do anything, because most people's reses and boosting up are A2s and A3s. So if you increase the cooldowns of enemy skills by 1, even by 1, they can't do anything. So she's got pretty good speed, 101. You're going to build her strictly as a nuke, but get the accuracy up on her, so that way you can decrease the enemy cooldown of the enemy team, which is insane. So if you have her as your nuker, definitely use her. She could be used in late game as well for 3v3. So I might actually pull her out of the vault and start using her, because she seems really fun. Alright, last but not least, let's go over some Skinwalkers. So the Skinwalker, same thing with the last lady. So attacks all enemies, increases the cooldown of all target skills by 2. So this is kind of the same thing, except it increases it by 2, and you can actually try him to be the control DPSer, because again, if they don't have any skills, they're basically just using their A1 to attack you, which doesn't hit as hard unless obviously it's a skull crown on your team. So he can nuke down and control the other team by increasing their skills. Then we have the new guy. He's pretty cool looking. Attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decrease crit rate, so they're not going to come back at you as hard because they're probably not going to crit for 2 turns. But using him, he just hits really hard. Decrease damage of all allies, and he decreased the damage of all allies receive from critical hits, so he kind of controls their crit rate on the other team. But mainly you're going to be using him for this, which gets down to a 3-turn cooldown, but has a 100% chance of decreasing their crit rate. Alright, so that's going to wrap it up with the epic AoE nukers. If I missed anybody, you guys have any other suggestions on guys that you use in the arena, I can show you another video on what my 3v3 teams are. They're mainly epics and legendaries, but this video I strictly just wanted to make for you guys who are beginners, maybe get some guys and they don't know if they're going to be used a lot or not, to mid-game players where you're trying to really push and build up that team to get the nukers down. Alright, so those are the champs. Let's get in the next part of this video. We're going to go over how to build the nukers. Alright, so let's go to one of my nukers I have, which is going to be Zargala. If you get Zargala, she is going to be a very good mid-end game nuke. Okay, so right now I try and build up as much attack and crit damage as possible. So if you look at these stats, they might not be achievable when you first start, but you can build up towards them. The first thing you want is you want to get up to a 100% crit rate. It's easy to do when you have a crit rate gauntlet. So usually you might get a 40, 50, 60% crit rate gauntlet. Go for the gauntlets first, okay? Build up that crit rate, get the crit rate up to 100%, so at least you know you're critting every single time. So if you can crit, and let's say she attacks every champion 3 times, you have 12 attacks going out. If all 12 of them aren't crits, you're losing out on so much damage. So the main thing you want to get up is the crit rate, okay? As a nuker, everything else you can kind of ignore. Most of my support champions don't have 100% crit rate, but I want them to have 100% crit rate. So she has 101% crit rate with a very, very high crit damage. Don't focus solely on crit damage if you don't have the crit rate, because crit damage doesn't mean anything if you don't have the crit rate. So that's the first thing. Next, I want to build her up to go a certain order on my team, so I have to make sure that her speed is where I want her to go. If you have a very, very high damage person, but they're not actually taking a turn because their speed is so low, it's pointless. You're not really going to do anything. You're kind of just there, you know? You look really tough, but you're not doing any damage. So with my team, for my Zargala, I'm actually using her as a go second team, so I don't care about the speed. It's a bad example, but let's say I replaced her attack boots with speed. So if I put a speed boot in, I would get my speed up to 189, 190 without having the extra speed buffs. So if I had speed boots, she would be where I wanted her to be. Okay, but you want the speed boots on her. You want to make sure her speed is up to par where you want her to go. You kind of want your champions to go back to back to back to back, so you don't get cut in from the other team. If you're noticing you're getting cut in from the other team, make sure you boost up the speed on your other champions to suffice and make sure that they're going in order. So that's the next part. The last part is you want to build her up with attack. Now, if your team is going first, you don't care about getting hit. You don't care about defense. You don't care about HP, you don't care about any of that stuff. You care about hitting as hard as you possibly can and glass cannon just kill the other team. Okay, so with your Zargala, 100% crit rate, make sure your speed's good, and then attack. The more attack, the harder they hit. The crit damage should be the last focus. Okay, so once you get the crit damage up, their damage is then going to scale even more. So if I go crit rate, speed, and then attack and crit damage, that's where you're gonna really build up the nukes. Okay, so if you're hitting and you're one-shotting everybody, great, don't change anything. But if you're not one-shotting people, look at if you have the 100% crit rate. Look at if you have enough attack, because if you have a 2,000 attack Zargala, she's gonna hit like a wet noodle. And then lastly, the crit damage. If you have sets like this, you get an extra 20% crit damage automatically. The masteries, auto, you're going to have a crit rate that gives you an extra 5% right there. And then crit damage, an extra 10% right there. I use this, which gives you an extra 20%. So even just in the masteries, you get an extra 30% crit damage right there. So that's going to help you out once you get up to 60. And then lastly, all of these are based off arena, just hitting harder by going first, hitting hard in the arena. So the masteries have a lot to do with how hard you're hitting in the arena. So that's why getting the Minotaur when you have nothing going on in the game, building up the masteries on your main heavy hitters is very, very important. More so than on your support champs right here, where they don't really hit as hard. So mainly getting the masteries on the damage dealers to win the arena, rather than the support champions to not do as much damage. Okay, so that is the nuker strat for that. How to gear them again is you're going to want to go over to my website, not my website, but the Raid Bro website, where you can actually create a champion. You can go to Raid Bro and actually input the gear that you want to kind of save on some silver, and see if you're going to have enough crit by the end of it, or see if you have enough crit damage or attack or whatever it may be. You can interchange the gear that you have to make sure that you're not wasting silver. So especially beginner and mid-game players, you don't want to waste your silver like I did in the beginning of the game, because I just kept changing gear all the time to see what works. Don't do that. Go over to my other video which explains the Raid Bro. Use Raid Bro and then it'll help you out. Cool. This, you want crit damage for this always, and then whatever they're based off of defense or attack, you want the defense and attack for here. I was lucky enough to get an extra 22% attack on this ring, which definitely boosts with the stats. And banner, if you have attack banner, this is definitely going to help with the speed. Getting the speed up as high as possible with the banner, but also getting the right stats that you want. So if you need more accuracy, get an accuracy banner. If you need more attack, if you're just going straight nuke, get the attack. I have her for my nuke because I have somebody else for my decreased defense. If you want to use her for decreased defense, get more accuracy. So now, that's how you would level it. Again, use the filter button. If you want the gloves, look for the best gloves you have for your guys. So filter, gloves, crit rate, and then even equipped. See who has the best gloves for your champ. Equip those. You want to get as many sets as you can, like the crit damage set, the speed set for the arena, the accuracy if you need more accuracy, the ignore defense. Most of these are end game stuff, but for middle and or beginning and mid game, you're going to be wanting getting the speed as well as the clan boss ones, which is this. So plus 15% attack and ignore 5% damage or defense. So definitely getting this set would benefit you a lot going through the arena. Okay, so let's wrap up the video. We're going to go into the Great Hall. This is why arena is so important. Okay, so get these up. Whatever you want, focus on either all of them getting up to 3, all of them get up to 7, but focus on the accuracy because that helps out in the game. Mainly focus on the defense, which also helps out in the game. But if you're going for the arena, this right here, crit damage. I don't have a lot of green guys, that's why I built that one last, but the crit damage plus 10 is 25% crit damage. So you get 30% for the masteries and then an extra 25% because you're a Great Hall. You have an extra 55% crit in every build that you do. Every champion that comes in, as long as it's that affinity, will get an extra almost 30 to 55% crit damage on your team. I'm trying to build up Zargala and my other nukers attack right now, so that's why I'm trying to build up this up to 10%, which will give me, I think, 20 extra percent of attack. So use this mainly for the clan boss to help you out with that, like accuracy, defense, and then once you are good with the clan boss, you go with that, go with the crit damage, go with the attack, and then if you want to build some tanky teams, go with the resist. So, guys, hope these videos helped you out. Go back, watch my other two again if you haven't already. Like the video if this helped you out at all. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're going to be making a ton of videos trying to help you guys out in the arena. If you guys have any questions, leave in the comments below. If I missed anybody that you're really excited about, let me know. Write in the comments. Guys, I appreciate the time. Thanks for sticking with me, and I will see you guys in the video soon.